Hello everybody, Weegees here, and welcome to the final part of my Ruby's Ship Iceberg. Today we will be looking at Rarepairs, those ships that have really small but sometimes very dedicated fan bases. So let's get into it. Strawbana is the ship between Ruby and Sun that sits at the time of writing this list at 41 works on AO3. This ship gets its name from the fruits that are associated with the respective characters, strawberries being Ruby's favorite food, and bananas presumably being Sun's favorite food. Is having the monkey Faunus' favorite food being bananas slightly racist? This is one of those ships where the real world bleeds into the fictional one, as the main reason, to my understanding, for this ship to exist is that the voice actors of these two characters are married, though some people started shipping the characters as well. It's not a terrible pairing by any means either, as their personalities would mesh quite well, with both characters being rather upbeat and optimistic people. These similarities will allow them to play off each other quite well. Both characters have a desire to support their friends, would also translate quite well into supporting one another. Now we have one of my personal favorite Rarepairs, and just one of my favorite ships in Ruby. Weiss Cream is the ship between my favorite character Weiss and another one of my favorite characters, Neo. Their name is derived from, well, Weiss's name and Neo's symbol, and general reference to ice cream. It's also a pretty solid pun I think Yang would approve. They sit at a far too low 21 works on AO3. As for why anybody would ship them, well, I can only give my personal reasons for that, which I've conveniently actually already talked about in another video, so I'll just throw to that. Not to be too mad about this, but my number one ship in Ruby is Weiss Cream, the ship between Weiss and Neo. Yes, you heard that right, my favorite ship is a Rarepair. Now before you mass dislike, or whatever shippers do when they disagree with something, let me explain. You remember when I said that nothing bonds two people like a shared trauma? Well, that's a huge part of why I ship these two. But first, let's talk about the less serious reasons behind my love for this ship. So there's just the fact that these two are my favorite characters, and everybody wants their two favorite characters to interact more. Interactions that I think would be vastly amusing, with these two characters being the two sassiest characters in the show. Nobody would stand a chance against them in a verbal battle if they teamed up, even though Neo can't talk. This commonality likely comes from their similar upbringings. Next reason is that this is one of the few people in the show that if Weiss dated, she would be the tall one, with Neo only being like 4'10". And if there is any character who deserves to feel tall, it's Weiss. I mean Neo as well, but that's kind of impossible with her size. Now that we've gotten the superficial reasons out of the way, let's delve a little bit more into the more serious reasons I mentioned. Similar to FreezerBurned, I feel like Neo and Weiss would be good for each other, because they could help each other overcome a shared trauma. What is this shared trauma I speak up? Well, they're screwed up childhoods. Both Weiss and Neo grew up the children of prominent people. Neo's father being a Veiled councilman, and Weiss's father being, well, you know, the head of the Schnee-Das Corporation, both of which were abusive to them. They both had unfair expectations thrust upon them, and finally both of them just wanted friends that would accept them for who they were, and not who they were related to. I think they could give each other that, and they are the only people who could really understand the things the other has gone through. I won't go further into detail as that's a video for another day, a day that should be pretty soon. Cinnabun is the much less popular Velvet ship, between her and her partner Yatsuhashi. In fact, that actually caught me off guard. I assumed that Velvet and Coco were partners cause, well, you know. This ship sits at 42 works. Its name is derived from the sweets that Yatsuhashi is named after, which is a Japanese cinnamon cookie, and from the type of Faunus Velvet is, being a bunny or a rabbit Faunus. It's also the name of a restaurant that specializes in sweets, which fits with the theme of their team. Also the fact that Velvet is a cinnamon roll. As for why people ship this, I honestly can't give you any personal insight, as from what I can gather from my research is that it has to do with some of the events from the books about them that I haven't read yet. Also, apparently Yatsuhashi has a crush on Velvet. Whether there is any hints towards it being mutual, couldn't tell you. But that fact isn't enough reason to ship them. Though from a purely aesthetic perspective, they could be cute together, like with their massive size differences. She could wear shirts like a dress, which would be cute. Sunflyr is the ship between Weiss and Velvet that sits at 40 works on AO3. The ship's name is derived from the fact that Schnee means snow in German, and Velvet is a bunny Faunus, and the hare is a type of rabbit. I feel like all of Velvet's ship names reference her Faunus heritage. There really isn't much reason I can see for these two to be shipped. I don't see any connection they could have, but I haven't read the books. Maybe I'm missing something about Velvet that would make these two a good ship. Greek Lotus is the ship between Ren and Pyrrha that sits at 39 works in AO3. Its name is derived from the Greek influence that Pyrrha has and Ren's symbol, which is a lotus. As far as ship names in Team Juniper goes, this one is my favorite. This ship exists purely, I assume, so that all Team Juniper have ships with each other, to complete the circle and achieve some sort of shipping symmetry. Because outside of that, honestly, there is no reason for this to exist. Combat Goggles is a pairing between Neptune and Yang that sits at 39 works. Its name is derived from the fact that both of these characters wear some sort of eyewear during the ship. As far as names go, this one is actually pretty inventive and creative. This ship owes its existence to one scene and one scene alone. The scene in question is from Painting the Town in Volume 2, where Neptune says "Well woman" about Yang after she threatens Junior. That's it. That is the entire reason for its existence. Maybe it comes from the fact that people see Yang as this mess flirt and Neptune is as well, so somebody figured that maybe they could cancel each other out or something. Or maybe some artists really liked the way that Neptune's light blue hair and Yang's yellow hair complemented each other, and they decided to draw them together. Sugar Rush is a pairing between Ruby and Nora that sits at 39 works on AO3. This ship gets its name from both characters' love of a specific sweet, with Ruby loving cookies and Nora loving pancakes and coffee. Similar to Strawbana, I can see people shipping these two for their similar outlooks on life, with both of them being generally positive characters, but with a small twist, in that both of these characters hold a similar sadness within them. Both have suffered loss in life, with Ruby's mother dying and Nora being an orphan. This ship could have been called Daddy Issues, and it would make complete sense, as the only way this ship would happen is if Winter acted on those massive father issues, though that is the name of a ship farther down the list, which it also makes sense for. Instead, the ship between Ironwood and Winter is called Winter Soldier, which is both a nice reference to the Marvel character and a nice combination of Winter's name and Ironwood's job and personality. This ship sits at 37 works and is entirely based on Winter's pre-existing daddy issues, or maybe the writer's daddy issues, or quite possibly both. Now, if you've watched my other parts, you likely know what I'm going to say. The age difference between these two makes this a really weird ship. But for this one, it's not just that. There's also this power imbalance here, with Ironwood being Winter's boss. I can see why people might assume that Winter might have some sort of feelings for Ironwood. She was rather overly loyal to him. It took a lot for him to turn her back on him. Nordic Winter is the ship between Weiss and Nora, that sits at 36 works on AO3. Its name is derived from Nora's Nordic background and Winter's winter-themed naming sense. This ship seems like a natural one to exist if you think about the dynamic that Nora has with Red, which is similar to the dynamic that Weiss and Ruby have. So naturally this might mean that Nora has a type, so she might gravitate towards Weiss if she was a lesbian, or has things somehow been different in their lives and these two wound up becoming friends at a young age. Maybe some feelings could have been developed. Noah's Ark is the ship between Neptune and Jean that sits at 36 works on AO3. Its name is a reference to Noah's Ark from the Christian Bible, which was built to endure the flooding of the earth, which is derived from the fact that Neptune is named after the Roman god of the sea, and the fact that the woman that Jean is referenced after, Joan of Arc, was a religious woman, even stands as a saint in France. So together that makes it Noah's Ark. This ship got its start in the early days of RWBY, when there was a dearth of male characters. So for people who enjoyed yaoi and LGBTQ writers, their options were limited. At least that is my guess, as I don't see any other reasons. QuickSliver is the ship between Mercury and Ruby, which sits at 36 works on AO3. It gets its name from Ruby's semblance, which at the time we thought was speed, and the fact that Mercury is named after the inferior Roman god of messages who is generally depicted wearing winged shoes. That makes him faster, thus the ship being named after the Marvel character QuickSliver, whose ability is speed, and the character's personality is even similar to Mercury's. Sunflyr is the ship between Yang and Ren, that sits at 34 works on AO3. It gets its name from the fact that Ren's symbol is a flower, and Yang's name roughly translates to Little Dragon of the Sunlight, hence a sunflower, which is a bright yellow flower. I don't know why they spell it so weird, I guess to make it more Ruby-esque. I feel in a similar manner to the way he grounds Nora, Ren would have the same effect on Yang. he could also give Yang that thing she kinda craves, a person that will stick by her no matter what. He could help her combat those abandonment issues. Now that I think about it, Yang gravitating towards a woman that's known to run away probably isn't the healthiest thing for someone who has clear abandonment issues. Coffee Shops is the poly ship between, well, Team Coffee, that gets its name from the name of the team, but with the twist of being a shop. Which makes me curious if anybody has made a fanfiction of them running a coffee shop together. This one, similar to every other Team Poly ship, exists for the same reason, to spread the love across the members. Unfortunately, it doesn't work all the way, as Coco is a lesbian, so she would really only have feelings for Velvet, but it does work with the other three. I mean, Yatsuhashi has a crush on Velvet, and if Velvet had a crush on both Coco and him, that could work. I don't know how Fox will work into this, but they can make it happen. Now for the ship I mentioned earlier, Daddy Issues. This ship is between Mercury and the Weiss. This ship gets its name from the fact that both these characters have massive father issues, with Mercury's father stealing his semblance, and then attempting to murder him, only for him to die at Mercury's hands, or feet, I guess. Then we have Weiss's father, Jacques. I don't think I really need to say anything about him. Everybody already knows how shitty of a father he is. Between the emotional abuse and manipulation he made Weiss suffer through, he also tried to kill Weiss, with that Armagigas test. If Mercury wasn't evil, I could see him and Weiss bonding over their extremely shitty fathers. Even if they didn't date, I think they would make great friends. Mother Issues is a ship between Yang and Emerald that sits at 25 works on AO3. It gets its name from the fact that both of them have mommy issues? Is the implication here that Emerald views Cinder as her mother? That would make her more popular ship very awkward. Or is it in reference to Emerald's lack of parents in general, which I guess would mean she would have mommy issues? Or maybe she absorbed some of Cinder's, who oozes that shit. Either way, it comes from that and Yang's clear mother issues that come from the fact that her mother abandoned her as a child, though she has seemingly gotten over them, as we kinda saw in Volume 5 and 6. Emerald is on the good side, so we will see if they have any bonding moments over this similarity. Back to the screwed up ships with Cold Murder, which is the ship between Weiss and Cinder. The name comes from Weiss's general cold aesthetic and the fact that Cinder tried to murder Weiss. This ship sits at 23 works on AO3 and on a closer look is held up by mostly 2 writers. So I have 2 things to say to them. 1, congratulations on holding up a rare pair on your own. That's impressive. And 2, please get some help. I really don't have anything else to say. I don't think I really have to say why this ship is so messed up, so let's move on. To another Cinder ship. This one being Black Glass, the ship between Blake and Cinder that gets its name from Blake's color, black, and Cinder's connection to glass. I actually do like the name for this ship. Unlike the Weiss and Cinder ship, this one is mostly smut. That also involves Yang. Honestly, I was expecting some White Fang Blake stories to be mixed into the bunch, as that would be the only way this ship could happen. This one isn't as bad as Cold Murder, as Cinder and Blake haven't really had much interaction. FrostBite is the pairing between Weiss and Adam that gets its name from Weiss's frosty demeanor and Adam's feral nature. Honestly, I don't see the connection to Adam here. Is it some sort of reference to the fact that he's a burn? That would be pretty screwed up. Either way, it doesn't really matter. These two never interact in the show, which is weird given Adam's hate for Shanice. So there really isn't much to say about it aside from gross because Adam's past actions to Blake. A few stories this ship appears in usually involve some sort of redemption for Adam or is some sort of background ship. ThunderCats, great name, is the ship between Blake and Nora that has 14 works, most of which are some sort of smut. Their name derives from Blake's fondest origin and from the fact that Nora is based around the god of thunder, Thor. It's also a reference to a pretty good 80s cartoon. Bunanas is a ship between Sun and Velvet. This ship sits at 11 works. It gets its name from Sun's love of bananas and the fact that Velvet is a bunny fondness. My best guess as to why this ship exists is just from the fact that they are some of the only fondness characters in the show. Or maybe they figured that Sun could help Velvet learn to stand up for herself. He could help her gain some confidence in herself as a fondness. Or maybe there's some kind of connection they have in the book, which I haven't read, and they're both in. JailBirds is the pairing between Crow and Robin that sits at about 11 works at the time of writing. This ship gets its name from the fact that both of these characters are named after birds, and that they both spent time in jail together in Volume 8. Which is a great reason. This ship is another newer one, with Robin being introduced in Volume 7, and then not having any interactions with Crow until Volume 8. There isn't too much to go off for this ship, but I think it could be a cute one, as they both hover in the same sphere of morality, that sort of gray area between law and chaos. Out of all of Crow's ships, this one also has the highest chance of becoming canon, as Clover is dead, and Winter has zero interest. They also work together at the end of Volume 8, so we will likely be getting more interactions between the two. Freckles is a pairing between Oscar and Penny. This ship gets its name from the fact that both of these characters have cute freckles. It's actually a pretty cute ship, and as far as alternatives to nuts and bolts, this one is pretty good. It's one of the more wholesome and cute rare pairs on this list, and one of the few where the characters have actually interacted. Crimson Lotus is a ship between Red and Ruby. This ship gets its name from Ruby's color red, which Crimson is the shade of, and the fact that Red's symbol is a lotus. They also could have called this R&R, like rest and relaxation, which is admittedly not as cool, but would be funny. Initially I thought this might be one of the ships that popped up in the early days of RWBY, when there weren't many characters, but upon researching it, I found most of the content was made in the last few years. I can only assume people see how Ren is with Nora and figured he could do the same with RWBY. Honestly, it's not the worst ship out there. Okay, this one is a crack ship that I absolutely couldn't not put on here. Because honestly, it has more of a chance of being canon than any other RWBY ship on this list. Guns N' Roses is the pairing between RWBY and her weapon, her baby, Crescent Rose. This ship actually sits at 10 stars in AO3. Its name is derived from RWBY's last name, and the fact that Crescent Rose is also a gun. It's also a reference to a popular 80s band with the same name. As I was saying earlier, this ship is the most canon RWBY ship in the show. She loves her weapon more than life itself. I mean, look at her reaction when it gets kicked off the edge in Volume 8. She is more sad about that than Yang. Crescent Rose is RWBY's one true love. Mint Rose is the pairing between Emerald and Coco that sits at 10 works on AO3. This ship gets its name from Emerald's mint-colored hair and Coco being named after the cocoa plant that makes chocolate. I decided at this moment that I hate this ship, purely based on its name. Fuck mint chocolate, shit's gross. CandyCane is the ship between Oscar and Nora. This ship sits at 8 works, and its name is based on, I assume, Nora's love of sugar and the fact that Oscar uses a cane in battle. Thus, CandyCane. This is another one of those ships where the ages of the characters makes it weird, with Nora being 19 now and Oscar being 15. Weiss Sage is the ship between Yang and Sage, and if you don't know who Sage is, he is the tall guy from Team Sun. It sits at 8 works on AO3. Its name is derived from the characters' names, with Sage's usually being Weiss and Yang Jalong meaning Little Light Dragon as we have gone over earlier, so we get Weiss Dragons. This ship was born in the early days of RWBY when there weren't a lot of male characters for people who like traditional ships, straight ships, I'm not sure exactly what to call it. It's usually featured with other Team RWBY members being shipped with Team Sun members. Steadfast is the name of the ship between Aesop teammates Alm and Harriet. It gets its name from their respective semblances, those being the ability to root themselves in place and to move at super speed. Thus, steady and fast. Steadfast. This ship exists because these two are on the same team. That's it. Really harkens back to a lot of RWBY's early ships. Escaped Convict is the ship between Oscar and Emerald that sits at 6 works. This one has another one of those names that doesn't really make sense to me, as there doesn't really seem to be any reference to Oscar in this. Only Emerald's history as both a thief and a villain, unless they're talking about the one moment where Oscar is imprisoned. But I wouldn't really call him a convict there. That would be more like escaping a serial killer's hands. If it wasn't for the ages of these characters, this would actually be a pretty interesting ship. After all, Oscar is the one that offered Emerald a way out of her abusive relationship with Cinder, and was the one to convince the rest of the heroes to accept her. Seeing that kindness slowly bloom into a romance could be really cute and sweet. Alas, the age difference between them makes that prospect both unlikely and nauseating. Green Machine is the ship between Neo and Penny. That has one of the most probably unintentionally dirty names I've seen for a ship so far. This ship sits at 6 works and gets its name from Neo being a reference to ice cream and the fact that Penny is a machine. The rather depraved name actually makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that most of the content is smut. Strawberry Ice Cream is the poly ship between Weiss, Neo, and RWBY that sits at 5 works. It gets its name from RWBY's love of strawberries and Neo's ice cream theme. I'm not actually sure where Weiss comes in. Honestly, the name Neapolitan Ice Cream would have made more sense given the colors and the flavors involved in that. I think by default I should like this ship. It does involve my favorite pairing with the added bonus of RWBY. Ginger Snaps is the ship between Nora and Penny that sits at 5 works on AO3. This ship gets its name from the fact that both of these characters are redheads, and are some of the sweetest characters in the show, with the Ginger Snaps being a type of cookie. Double Bow is the ship between Blake and Penny that sits at 4 works. The name Double Bow comes from the fact that both of these characters wear bows on their heads. Well, I guess they used to. I think Blake forgoes her bow in the more recent volumes. Clockwork Orange is the poly ship between Ozpin, Crow, and Torchwick that sits at 4 works. Its name is mostly a reference to the movie in which they drew heavy inspiration for Torchwick's design, but it is spelled in a way that references both Ozpin and Crow. My assumption for the reason this ship exists is because someone out there is really horny for hot older men. Bright Eyes is the poly ship between 3 resident Cimarrols, RWBY, Oscar, and Penny. This ship sits at 3 works. It gets its name from the fact that all 3 of these characters are these bright-eyed optimists. As far as poly ships go, this one is probably the cutest. And even if it wasn't romantic, I would have loved to see these 3 hang out more. FreezerBurned Ice Cream is both a long-ass ship name and what the 2 people who wrote for this ship called the poly ship between Yang, Weiss, and Neo. This ship only has 2 works, as I mentioned before, and both of them are smut. Which is unfortunate because I might read a fic involving these 3. This ship does, after all, include my 2 favorite ones. Now for something different, and by different, I mean a reverse RL. Something we don't see very often in fanfiction, with Trafikk Light being the poly ship between RWBY, Oscar, and Jean. Though it's more than likely RWBY dating both Jean and Oscar, but them not dating each other, because there's some age problems there. This ship only has 2 works. It gets its name from the colors of these characters, which together make up the lights of a traffic light, with their colors being green, red, and yellow respectively. Honestly, the only reason that I put this ship on here is because of its absolutely hilarious name. Guilty Conscience is the ship between Winter and Harriet that has a single work. This ship gets its name from the fact that both of these characters have done things that they feel incredibly guilty about, both pertaining to the same person, Ironwood. It's honestly a pretty fucked up name. And that's it. That is the final part of my RWBY Ship Iceberg. Damn, there are a lot of ships, and I didn't even cover all of them. There are plenty of other ships I didn't cover because either they didn't have any presence whatsoever in the community, or have popped up too recently for me to have put them on here, or have popped up too recently for me to put them on here when the list was made, or they just weren't interesting enough for me to cover. Maybe I'll do a complete version and add all the other ones in as well. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, comment, and consider subscribing. And thanks for watching. Weegees out.